He was just trying to board his flight ticket in hand, ID ready, when TSA dragged him behind a security door. They said he fit the profile, but wouldn't say what that meant. 20 minutes later, his seat was given to someone else. Someone white. No apology, no explanation, just silence. Then his daughter hit record, and the truth ignited a storm no airport could ground. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the strip mall rooftops of East Glendale, casting long amber shadows over cracked pavement and neon reflections. Traffic buzzed along the boulevard, honks blending with the occasional siren. Behind a row of nail salons and vape shops stood the Iron Lotus Dojo, a clean-lined modern facility that catered to the suburbs' middle-class families, a place where kids in crisp uniforms bowed, struck, and shouted with precision. Outside its glass front, hunched beside a rusty shopping cart, stood Marcus Bell. At 37, his life had already crested and crumbled. Layers of faded army jackets clung to his frame, torn jeans crusted with street dust. A black beanie covered his graying dreadlocks, one worn-out sneaker, and a boot that didn't match hugged his feet. His eyes, however, they were sharp. Watch. Clink. Clink. He dropped a crushed soda can into a sack hooked to his cart. But his eyes never left the kids inside. The sound of their laughter cut deeper than words. Inside, children practiced kata routines, in synchronized motion, guided by the barked cadence of Coach Travis Riker, a white man in his late 40s, barrel-chested, bald, and still sporting the scowl of his MMA days. His voice rang through the room like a blade. Discipline. Focus. Precision. A boy noticed Marcus outside, nudging the girl beside him. Soon whispers bubbled through the class like static. Heads turned. Snickers followed. Then the full wave of laughter. Coach Riker glanced out the window, spotting the figure in rags mimicking stances, sloppily but recognizably on the sidewalk. Riker's jaw tensed. Cut the drills, he snapped. The laughter halted as suddenly as it had begun. He stalked toward the window, the glass separating dignity from disdain. A barrier, thin as glass, thick as history. Marcus paused, hands mid-form. He looked directly at Riker, expression unreadable. Behind him, children crowded to watch, eyes wide with curiosity and cruelty. Coach Riker stepped out, arms folded. "This ain't a shelter," he said coldly, voice deliberately loud. "It's a school." Some of the kids laughed again. A mother picking up her son hurriedly shuffled him to her Lexus, shooting Marcus a look like he was pollution made flesh. Words that mark the line. Coach Riker wasn't done. "Kids, lesson number 1. He turned back toward the watching students. "Don't end up like that." He gestured to Marcus. "That's what happens when you waste your time and make excuses. When you give in to weakness. He's what you dodge, not what you imitate." The dojo was silent. Some kids looked uncomfortable. Others smirked, emboldened by the cruelty of an adult. Marcus said nothing. He simply looked down at his hands. They were calloused, scarred, still strong, ghosts behind the eyes. Riker turned to re-enter the dojo, shaking his head. "Go beg somewhere else," he muttered. But Marcus didn't move. His gaze returned to the kids inside, watching, always watching. His fingers moved slowly through invisible patterns, kata movements, imprinted in muscle memory. His foot turned out, hands shifting with grace, if not strength. Someone knocked from inside. A boy mimicked his movement back at him, mockingly. Marcus smiled, barely, then whispered, low to no one in particular, "Sensei Daniel." I still remember. The memory floods back, 10, maybe 11 years old. A dusty dojo in South Central LA. A small black boy with wide eyes and fast feet. A teacher in his 60s, Japanese-American, firm but warm. "Discipline is not just for battle," Sensei Daniel Ito had said. "It is for becoming who you were meant to be." That dojo had burned down years ago. Gentrified out of memory, just another ghost beneath LA's bright sheen. Present collides with past. Inside, the class resumed. Riker, agitated, paced near the front, but his attention kept darting toward the window. Marcus was still there, still doing forms, still watching, still there. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't begging. It was something else. Something dangerous. Something disciplined. A mother leaned toward Riker near the front desk. "You really should call someone," she whispered. That man's probably on drugs or worse. Riker nodded absently. But something tugged at him. The way Marcus moved. It wasn't random. The eyes of the forgotten. Inside, Jalen, a shy mixed-race boy near the back, watched Marcus differently. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't mocking. He was fascinated. Jalen copied the movement quietly when no one was looking, mirroring Marcus through the glass. Riker saw it, and he snapped. Challenge delivered. Respect denied. Storming back toward the door, Riker swung it open wide and pointed. "You think this is funny?" he growled, voice loud enough to echo off the concrete. "You think this is some game?" Marcus didn't flinch. Riker's voice sharpened. "You think this is a joke?" Then he stepped back and sneered. "Then show us what you got." The class froze. Phones rose. Jalen's eyes widened. Marcus looked down, then up again, and stepped forward. Marcus stepped barefoot onto the mat, slow, limping slightly, like the cold from the pavement had sunk into his bones. Every eye followed his every movement. Each footfall a disruption. His skin, dark and worn like sun-stained leather, stood out in a sea of pressed white uniforms and soft suburban comfort. The smell of the streets trailed behind him. Asphalt, old sweat, a hint of rusted tin. Kids scrunched their noses. Parents exchanged wary glances. Phones came out fast. The camera clicks weren't loud, but Marcus could feel them. That tiny artificial shutter sound, somehow louder than any insult. Digital eyes, hungry to turn him into a meme before he could finish breathing. He reached the center. Didn't speak. Didn't smile. Instead he bowed. It was a clean, deep, and exact bow, not the shaky attempt of someone guessing the tradition. It was the kind of bow that only comes from years of repetition. The kind that meant something. Reverent. Grounded. Real. Coach Riker narrowed his eyes. Marcus lifted his head. Breathed in. The tension in the room was a living thing now, hanging thick as fog. Then, in one flowing, perfect arc, he spun. His left foot pivoted clean, arms slicing through the air with balletic fluidity, and his right leg cracked out behind him, in a flawless spinning back kick that tore the silence in half. A subtle pop echoed off the dojo walls as the air was displaced by speed. It wasn't showy, it was sharp. Every movement exact, not wasted, not forced. The phones stopped. Some stayed frozen in midair. A few mouths hung open. Jalen blinked, stunned. He didn't laugh. He didn't record. He just watched, eyes wide, posture slack, as the man they'd all mocked moved with more grace than anyone he'd ever seen on that mat. Coach Riker shifted on his feet. "That street luck won't get you far," he said, voice brittle. "Let's see you do something that counts. Try breaking something real." Marcus said nothing. He only turned, his eyes calm, as if the insult was too old, too familiar to deserve acknowledgement. Riker barked to one of the older students near the back. "Bring the boards. Not one. Bring the stack." A few kids whispered. "The whole stack?" one asked. Riker nodded without looking. "If he's for real, let him prove it." From the storage closet came a thick wooden slab, a stack of 6 boards bolted together at the corners for max resistance, usually reserved for black belts during testing. Marcus stood still. Riker dropped them with a thud in the center of the floor, then motioned to Marcus. "Let's see it, Bruce Street." A few students snorted laughter. One girl muttered, "This is gonna be embarrassing." Marcus walked to the boards, squatted slightly, stretching his legs. His hand touched the surface, running his fingers over the grain like he was reading a story hidden in the wood. He took a step back, closed his eyes, breathed. For several long seconds, there was no movement, only stillness. A stillness so intense, so full of purpose, it began to feel heavy. Then, a sharp inhale, and he moved. His right hand came down in one lightning motion, a downward vertical strike, aimed dead center. Crack. The sound wasn't just a snap, it was a shatter. The stack split clean in two, fragments exploding outward, clattering across the floor like broken armor. Some of the smaller children gasped audibly. Even the teenagers took a step back. One boy's phone clattered to the ground. Even Riker flinched. Marcus didn't gloat, didn't smile. He just stood up slowly, dusted his hands lightly against his pants, and stepped back to the edge of the mat. Silence lingered, a deep, eerie silence, until someone whispered near the back. They didn't mean for anyone to hear, but the words cut through the air like a knife through paper. "He's not just good, he's record-breaking." And suddenly, everything changed. The dojo smelled of silence and shattered preconceptions. Coach Riker stood stiff, arms folded too tightly, lips barely masking the sting of embarrassment. The boards, those sacred rites of passage, lay broken in pieces behind Marcus, who had already stepped off the mat and was walking back to the sidewalk. One slow step at a time. No applause, no recognition, just a heavy quiet, broken only by the quiet hum of recording phones and hushed whispers. A girl near the back smirked as she hit upload. Her caption read, "Homeless man breaks into dojo. Thinks he's Bruce Lee karate fails Skid Row style." It took exactly 22 minutes before the video reached its first 1,000 views. By nightfall, it had been stitched, memed, and reposted on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Within hours, it had passed 1 million plays. Not for the kick, not for the perfect form, not for the strength in silence, but for the smell they assumed he carried, the rags he wore, the skin they couldn't see past. The world saw only what it wanted to see. In video after video, Marcus was dubbed Bruce Homeless, Kung Fu Crackhead, and Hobo Lee. TikTokers reenacted his bow mockingly, waving in tattered clothes with fake beards and over-exaggerated accents. A popular YouTube commentator laughed through a reaction video. "Yo, he straight up looks like he walked out the dumpster and into a Jackie Chan movie. What even was that?" His kick, graceful, trained, near perfect, was dismissed as fluke luck or crackhead adrenaline. And the they weren't subtle. Why do these people always show up where they're not wanted? He broke the boards? Must have been high. If you let one in, they'll all think they belong. Not if he was homeless. Not if he was dangerous. Just the quiet assumption that a man like Marcus didn't deserve to be in a space like that. Marcus watched the hate on a cracked flip phone. Beneath the I-5 underpass in East LA, Marcus lay bundled in his coat, back against a stained concrete wall, his cart parked close like a sleeping dog. Nearby, traffic pulsed above, like a heartbeat he could never catch up with. The phone in his hands was ancient, flip style, scratched, screen barely visible. It could just about connect to the slowest data signal. But it was enough. He scrolled, watched the pixelated versions of himself fall and spin and bow again and again. Not as art, not as discipline, as content. He closed the phone, opened it again, watched it again. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just whispered, "Figures." But somewhere, someone wasn't laughing. Talia Reese, 34, sat on her living room floor in Inglewood, rocking her toddler daughter to sleep with one hand, scrolling with the other. Her laptop hummed softly beside her, Final Cut Pro still open, her freelance gig waiting for her attention. She worked nights editing brand videos, trailers, political ads, anything to keep the rent steady. That's when she saw it. The meme. The caption. But not the joke. She replayed the kick 3 times, slowed it, froze the moment mid-spin, zoomed in. The foot was perfectly aligned, the pivot clean, the poise controlled. That wasn't randomness. That was training. And behind the man's stillness, she saw grief, pain, and a strange kind of dignity. Not performative, not desperate, rooted. She whispered, "This ain't no joke." Talia hit upload. With a different caption, she clipped the video, removed the mocking audio, enhanced the clarity, reframed the context. Her caption read, "What if we stopped laughing and started listening? A black man, forgotten, watched your kids train from the sidewalk, then walked in and shattered more than just boards. Who's Marcus Bell? This is skill, not a joke." She added a hashtag, humble master. Then she hit post. By midnight it was spreading like fire in a dry forest. One share turned into 20, 20 into 1,000. Verified users reposted it. Black athletes chimed in. "That man has form." Former martial artists commented, "That's decades of muscle memory." TikTokers remixed it, but this time not as a joke, as a... One woman posted, "Why are we quicker to mock than to ask where a man like that came from?" A well-known black writer tweeted, "What does it say about us that we'd rather humiliate a man with skill and trauma than offer him a meal?" Within 6 hours, Talia's post had crossed 2 million views. The final twist before dawn. At 6:13 a.m. Talia's inbox pinged with a message from a name she didn't recognize. Sensei Renin 65. The message read, "His name is Marcus Bell. He trained with Sensei Daniel Ito in South Central. Early night. He was supposed to be the next big thing before it all fell apart. Find him. He deserves more than this." Talia stared at the message, her heart racing. She turned to her daughter, still sleeping peacefully on her chest. Then she whispered, "Marcus, who are you?" The freeway was quieter than usual for a Saturday morning. Gray fog hovered like uncertainty above the East LA skyline, and the hum of tires echoed under the overpass where Marcus lay curled near his cart. Steam curled from a manhole nearby. The city was waking up. But for Marcus, the day had already started. Another rotation in a loop of hunger, cold, and invisibility. He didn't see the car pull up at first. Didn't hear the door open. "Marcus?" The voice was soft. Female. Not afraid. Not pitying. Just there. He stirred, blinking against the morning light. Talia stood in front of him, her camera bag slung across one shoulder, her hand holding out a sealed brown paper bag with the faint aroma of warm food. "I brought breakfast," she said, smiling lightly. "Eggs, grits, bacon. Real food." Marcus didn't move. His eyes scanned her face, cautious. A flip phone lay beside him, dead now. He remembered her, the woman who posted the video, the one who reframed the joke. "You from the news?" he mumbled, voice like gravel. "No, not yet," she said. "Just someone who saw something the world was too blind to notice." He stared. She stepped closer. "You don't owe me anything. I think you deserve more than a sidewalk." Marcus looked down, then turned away. "I ain't no rescue story. You're not a punchline either." He didn't answer. Just picked up the paper bag slowly, hands trembling slightly. Then he stood cautiously, prideful, as if dignity could be pieced together from movement alone. A ride toward memory. They drove in silence. Talia's small Nissan weaving through the patchy LA streets. Marcus sat hunched in the passenger seat, clutching the food but not eating it yet. His eyes darted occasionally toward her, then back out the window. "You ever think about going back?" she asked gently. He didn't answer. She tried again. "To karate, I mean. You didn't just walk into that dojo cold. You moved like you've been doing it your whole life." Marcus's jaw twitched. The muscles along his temple clenched. Talia waited. The silence stretched so long, she almost let it die. Then he spoke quietly. "He taught me. Sensei Daniel. Back when South Central had a dojo before they turned it into a smoothie bar." She turned to look, but he kept his eyes on the road ahead. "He used to say discipline ain't just for fighting. It's for survival. I didn't get it then. Back then he had a name worth remembering." Flashback, 1998. A gymnasium in Compton thundered with cheers. An 18-year-old Marcus Bell stood on a makeshift podium, sweat-drenched, teeth showing in a rare smile. A gold medal hung around his neck. California State Karate Champion, under 19 division. Sensei Daniel stood beside him, weathered, proud, his arm around Marcus's shoulder. "You've earned it, kid. You don't even know how bright you shine yet." A scout in a college tracksuit approached them, after the ceremony. "You ever think about college, Marcus? Full scholarship. East Coast. We want you." Marcus had cried that night, not out of pride, but disbelief. The kind that only came when you were told your entire life that greatness belonged to other people, that your place was the bleachers, not the stage. But the system didn't want him to shine. 3 days later, Marcus and a friend stopped at a liquor store on the way home from training. He stayed outside while his friend went in. Moments later, sirens screamed. Police swarmed. A robbery had occurred a few blocks away. 2 black males, one matching Marcus's vague description. He was tackled to the ground before he could speak. He tried explaining. His sensei vouched for him. The store camera showed nothing, except Marcus not going inside. But the prosecutor pushed for trial, said his record was questionable. He had been caught with a small amount of weed at 16. A misdemeanor now used as character. They gave him 5 years. The scout never called again. Prison took more than just time. Marcus didn't fight much inside, not with fists. But the daily humiliations, the strip searches, the names, the way guards looked through him, those were wars no kata could defend against. He read old karate manuals at night, stared at peeling paint, practiced stances in his cell, until his bunkmate laughed. When he got out, nothing was waiting. No mother she'd passed during his 2nd year. Cancer he never got to say goodbye to. No home. The apartment long since sold.
No dojo. It had burned in an electrical fire, never rebuilt.
Just a record, a stigma, and hands that knew how to move but no longer knew where to go. Talia listened, not as a reporter but a witness. She parked near MacArthur Park, near a community center still half boarded up from last month's vandalism. Marcus finally finished the sandwich. He looked stronger just from the calories alone. No one would hire me, he said, voice steady now. Doesn't matter how many charges were dropped. I got the look, the name, the paper trail. He turned to her. I used to be somebody. You still are, she said. He scoffed. To who? She didn't answer. Not right away. She turned to him, eyes wet but unblinking. To the boy who copied your bow from the back of the dojo. To the people who watched that video and saw something more than a costume. She paused. To me. They sat in silence again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt like potential, like something waiting to be unearthed. Then Talia leaned in, voice low, like she was handing him a secret. What if the world finally said sorry, she whispered, and watched you rise? Marcus didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. The next morning, the door to Iron Lotus Dojo was locked 15 minutes earlier than usual. A new sign, hastily printed and taped to the glass, read, "No unauthorized visitors. Students only. Please respect our space." Below it, Coach Riker paced with sharp, clipped movements. His face, usually smug with command, was tight with fury, not from what had happened inside the dojo, but from what had happened outside it, on screens. The video Talia reposted was now on every local news segment, flooded with hashtags like Humble Master and Jend Let Marcus Train. Thousands of commenters, teachers, veterans, former martial artists, called out the dojo's handling. But just as many spat venom, keep the bum out. Dojos are for discipline, not pity. My kid's not training with a homeless ex-con. Riker didn't post a statement. He didn't need to. His silence was loud and it echoed through the community. That afternoon, he banned Marcus from the premises. His justification, emailed to every parent and pinned to the dojo wall, read, "For the safety and psychological comfort of our students, we are no longer allowing Mr. Marcus Bell to enter our dojo. His presence is considered a disruption, and in light of recent events, potentially dangerous." The word dangerous hit like a slow-burning fuse. By the end of the week, 5 parents had emailed threats to withdraw their children if the homeless man showed up again. 2 donations were suspended. One father, a local investor and longtime donor, called Riker personally. "I don't pay for my son to train next to vagrants. If this stunt continues, so does my checkbook." Riker nodded quietly, voice tight with practiced diplomacy. "We're handling it." But outside the dojo, the story was shifting. Talia returned with her camera and a small portable mic. She didn't shove it in anyone's face. She simply asked questions. "Do you think he should be allowed to train?" And let the kids answer. She captured truth in shaky voices. One girl, no older than 9, looked into the lens and said, "He looked like he really knew what he was doing. Like, better than sensei. Kinda." A teen boy shrugged. "Honestly, he was cooler than any of us. I mean, he broke 6 boards. I can barely break one." Jalen, the quiet one in the back row, said, "I want to learn from him. He moved like he belonged." The footage went viral within days. But not everyone welcomed the attention. The next morning, 2 protest signs appeared outside the dojo. One in blocky red marker, "Let him train." The other just feet away, "Protect our kids." By noon, parents argued on the sidewalk while their children changed inside. One mother snapped at another, "He doesn't belong here. This place is for families." Talia arrived mid-argument, camera rolling. Coach Riker stood silently at the door, arms folded. Marcus watched from across the street. He didn't step forward, just leaned against a lamppost, observing the fracture he never asked to create. When Talia approached, her voice was soft. "They're scared of what you represent." Marcus didn't blink. "I didn't ask to be here." She turned, eyes locked on his. "Maybe you were meant to be." He shook his head, almost laughing, not out of humor but disbelief. "Meant to be a symbol? For what? Homeless dignity? Tragic talent? I'm not your headline, Talia." She nodded. "You're not. You're a man with a name, and you deserve the choice to be more than a shadow." He looked away, jaw tight. "They want me gone, and I don't blame them." "You broke their illusion," she replied. "That's always uncomfortable." Later that week, flyers for the citywide open martial arts tournament began appearing across gyms and social centers. No affiliations required, no background checks for open division. Anyone could register. an old format being revived for the first time in over a decade, due to public demand. Talia stared at the flyer in her hand. The next day, without asking Marcus first, she signed him up. When she told him, he stared at her for a long time. Not angry, not excited, just stunned. Then he whispered, "You just painted a target on my back." Talia smiled faintly, replying, "No, Marcus, I just gave the world a front row seat." The sun had just begun to rise when Marcus laid his jacket flat on the cracked concrete of the old Dollar Saver parking lot. The paint for the handicapped space was nearly gone, faded to a blue ghost beneath scattered gravel. He stretched his legs in silence, slow and steady, each motion precise. His breath came out visible, a fine mist against the chill of the morning air. There were no mats, no mirrors, just oil stains, broken glass, and possibility. He trained there every morning. At first it was just him and the wind, silent witnesses in an unmarked dojo no one could evict him from. But before long, the world started to follow. From across the street, behind fences and through cracked windows, kids began to appear. They watched him. Some just lingered for a few minutes before school. Others stood behind dumpsters or pretended to be playing ball nearby. The first to cross the invisible line was Jalen, the quiet boy from the dojo. He arrived without his gi, wearing jeans and a hoodie, backpack slung low, and eyes wide with a kind of reverence only reserved for heroes who never asked to be admired. Jalen didn't speak at first, just copied Marcus's stances from a distance, mirroring each motion like he was learning a sacred ritual. Eventually Marcus spoke, voice low but firm. "If you're gonna train with me, you better stop guessing." Jalen straightened. "Yes, that was the beginning." Talia came every third day, setting up her small rig from the trunk of her Nissan. She kept her distance, not wanting to crowd the space Marcus had made his own, but always within sight. She brought water, protein bars, and batteries, filmed discreetly when the light was just right, not to exploit, but to capture truth before it disappeared. In one clip, Marcus corrected Jalen's posture with a quiet but commanding hand. "Chin down, shoulders open. Don't hide. Even when they expect you to." The camera didn't linger on the form. It lingered on the lesson. That clip alone hit 700,000 views within days. Marcus never lectured. He told stories instead, fragments from a life interrupted. "When I was inside," he once told Jalen, as they sat on an old tire rim, "I used to draw chalk lines in my cell just to have a place to train." Guards laughed. Inmates too. But the muscle didn't forget. Jalen listened like he was hearing gospel. "Doesn't matter what floor you stand on," Marcus continued, "as long as you remember who's standing." Over the next weeks, more kids came. One brought his little sister. Another started skipping the dojo classes just to train here. Word spread. The dojo didn't like that. Coach Riker caught wind, called out kids in class, questioned their loyalty, told parents Marcus was endangering minors, sent an email warning that students found training outside approved facilities would be dismissed from the program. But the sidewalk didn't care. And neither did Marcus. Every night Marcus curled beneath overpasses or in abandoned buildings. No sponsorships, no hot meals, only what Talia could afford and what strangers donated after her videos went viral. Sometimes he refused to help, too proud to ask twice. Other times his body betrayed him, shaking from lack of calories, forcing him to sit mid-kata. Flashbacks haunted him when it got too quiet. Concrete reminded him of cell floors. Sirens jolted him back to strip searches and handcuffs. The world might have started to cheer for him, but the ghosts didn't let go that easy. Still, every morning he rose. Still, every morning he trained. One afternoon, chasing a memory, Marcus wandered south toward his old neighborhood. Where storefronts once held color, there were now padlocks and graffiti. But in the middle of it all stood a brick building, roof caved slightly, weeds crawling through cracks, its front door tagged with the words, "No one left to fight." It had been Sensei Daniel's dojo. The boards on the windows were aged but not new. The inside, when he pried them back, was full of dust and silence. The old mats were gone, mirrors cracked, but the feeling was still there. Marcus fell to his knees. This place had taught him balance before the world took it. Here he was once more than black, more than poor, more than predictable. He stayed there that night, sweeping floors by flashlight, as if cleaning could restore the years. The next day he began to rebuild. Kids followed him. Volunteers showed up, some who remembered Sensei Daniel, others who had only seen Marcus online. Talia filmed the restoration day by day. A hashtag emerged. Rebuild the dojo. Donations trickled in. Gloves, wood planks, leftover paint. Jalen painted a sign above the cracked doorway. The Bellway. Marcus made him redo it. Put Ito's name first, he said. I'm just here to keep the light on. The night before tournament registration closed, Talia received an email with the subject line, Urgent. Eligibility complaint. Marcus Bell. It was from the city tournament board. Filed by Coach Travis Riker. The complaint claimed that Marcus posed a legal risk to minors, citing his criminal past and alleging unauthorized instruction to registered students. The final line read, We regret to inform you that Marcus Bell's participation is under review pending disqualification. Talia stared at the screen, the light glowing against her frozen face. The screen faded to black. The email came with bureaucratic coldness. No greeting, no preamble, just a black and white letterhead from the Los Angeles Martial Arts Tournament Board. Subject line, Complaint under review, Marcus Bell. Talia sat frozen in front of her laptop, the cursor blinking like a silent accusation. Across from her, Marcus sat quietly, sipping lukewarm instant coffee from a paper cup, oblivious to the digital ambush. Marcus, she said softly, you've been flagged. His eyes barely moved. For what? She read aloud, voice tightening with each word. Alleged violent felonies, pattern of behavior inconsistent with tournament integrity, unlicensed instruction to minors. Marcus exhaled through his nose. No anger, just the fatigue of a man who'd been here before. A man who knew how deep the stain went, how even erased ink still left a shadow. I don't got felonies, he said. Charges got dropped. Twice. I know, Talia replied. But they're not counting on facts. They're counting on fear. Within the hour, Talia compiled Marcus's full legal file. Arrest records with no convictions, evidence of expungement, letters from social workers, and a community center verifying his volunteer hours. She emailed the documents, then printed hard copies and hand-delivered them to the tournament office herself. But the board wouldn't make a decision. Not yet. Pending internal review, they said.
No timeline, no clarity.
Just silence dressed up as policy. The internet doesn't forget, but sometimes it fights. Word of the disqualification leaked within hours. A former student of Iron Lotus, now a college junior with 40,000 followers on TikTok, posted a video titled Why Marcus Bell is Being Punished for Surviving. The outrage came fast. Let Marcus Fight trended nationally by nightfall. Black athletes, actors, and public defenders reposted the story. A local news station ran a segment titled, From Sidewalks to Sanctions. Can Redemption Compete? Talia's inbox exploded. One email read, He taught my son more in 2 days than our private dojo did in 2 years. This isn't about rules. It's about who gets to win. Another simply said, I was wrong about him. He belongs on that mat. Cameras began showing up at Marcus's concrete dojo. Reporters knocked on Talia's door. Every morning, more vans lined the curb. What began as curiosity shifted into spectacle. One reporter asked, Marcus, do you think you're being targeted because you're homeless? Marcus didn't answer. Another asked, do you think a criminal past should disqualify someone, even if they've turned their life around? He looked directly into the lens. If surviving makes me disqualified, then maybe that's the problem. The clip went viral. Again, one morning, as Marcus finished a solo kata in the community center lot, Jalen ran up, breathless, with his mom following close behind. Jalen's mother, Candace, was young, maybe late 20s, with sharp eyes and a protective posture. She handed Marcus a bottle of water without speaking. You okay? She asked finally. I'm used to being disqualified, he muttered. Candace nodded slowly. Then out of nowhere she said, My brother. Same thing. Caught in the wrong place, wrong time. Spent 3 years inside, before they found the real guy. That record still haunts him. She looked up at Marcus with something like understanding. No pity, no performance. Just the quiet kinship of people who knew how it felt to watch your future get erased by someone else's pen. Sometimes, she said, the system doesn't care if you're right. It just cares that you're convenient. Marcus nodded, and for the first time that day, he smiled. 3 days before the tournament, the board sent a new message. This one came with fanfare, a public press release designed to look fair, balanced, and benevolent. After careful consideration, it read, The board finds no current legal basis to bar Marcus Bell from competition. However, due to the unique media attention and the need to preserve event integrity, Mr. Bell will not be allowed any form of official sponsorship or financial backing during the event. Talia read it twice. They're letting you in, she said, but they're making sure you still walk in with less than everyone else. Marcus folded the letter carefully. They don't want me to win, he said. They just don't want the heat. Tournament day arrived like thunder in a dry valley. The gymnasium was massive, banners draped from rafters, bleachers packed, judges seated in crisp uniforms, photographers buzzed like flies, competitors stretched, jogged, shadow-boxed in designated corners. Marcus stepped into the space quietly, wearing a simple black t-shirt, old sweats and borrowed sandals. No team colors, no sponsor logos, just breath and resolve. Then he glanced at the roster board. His name was listed under the open division bracket. So was another. Riker. Travis. Iron Lotus Dojo. Marcus stared at the name for a long silent moment. His face didn't change, but his fists clenched. The fluorescent lights of the tournament gym buzzed like static over tension. The polished wood floors gleamed too bright. Cameras clicked before anyone threw a single punch. The air held the thick scent of sweat, nerves, and power. But under that, something colder, something Marcus recognized long before his name was even called. They weren't here to see him rise. They were here to see if he'd crack. The tournament brackets were posted on a projector, flickering blue text on a white wall. Marcus's name sat in the bottom left corner. A brutal seed placement. He'd have to go through 3 state-ranked black belts in succession to even touch the finals. Names that had sponsors, banners, warm-up teams. One kid was fresh off a training camp in Tokyo. It wasn't random. Nothing about it was. Talia leaned in and whispered. They rigged it. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. His face was stone. Still, unreadable. But in his jaw the pressure had started to mount. He bowed at the call of his name and stepped onto the mat for his first round. Round 1, not meant to last. His first opponent was fast, young and freshly powdered in gym-sponsored gear. The crowd knew him. They chanted his name like a local hero. Marcus, in contrast, wore no patches, no emblem, just plain black, just shadow. The bell rang. His movements were slow at first. Intentional. His hands rose not to strike but to gauge. He dodged 2 kicks, slipped a third, and caught the 4th midair, a clean block. But already, his lips were dry. Too dry. He hadn't eaten properly in 24 hours. He'd given his last protein bar to Jalen. He didn't regret it, but he felt it now. His knees dipped. His lungs dragged. His vision blurred just slightly. A right hook clipped his temple. Gasps. But Marcus didn't fall. Instead he exhaled, centered himself, and delivered a series of measured strikes. Not wild, not fast, just exact. A body shot. A shoulder push. A timed sweep. His opponent dropped with a thud. Not out cold, just outmatched. The crowd blinked. It was like watching a ghost fight. Quiet, precise, undeniable. But even in victory, Marcus staggered slightly as he bowed. Talia rushed to the sidelines, handing him water and a towel. You're burning out, she whispered. I'm just warming up, he said, though his hand trembled slightly as he took the bottle. His second match was a test of something deeper. Not skill, not endurance, morality. His opponent was a thick, stocky man from a high-ranking gym. Heavy on the chest, light on mercy. The moment the match started, it was clear he wasn't here to fight fair. The first elbow came accidentally to the back of Marcus's neck. The ref said nothing. Then came a low knee, a blatant groin shot, thinly disguised in a tumble. Still nothing. Talia rose from her seat. Ref, that's not legal, she shouted. The crowd murmured, confused. Still nothing. Marcus paused. Breathe. Blood trickled slightly from the corner of his mouth. The man jeered. You don't belong here, old man. But Marcus closed his eyes. Right there on the mat, mid-round, in the middle of a storm of disrespect, he meditated. 1 breath. 2. Then, with a suddenness that made the front row flinch, he struck. Left elbow. Spinning back fist. Reverse side kick. 3 hits in less than 2 seconds. Each landed clean. Surgical. Fine. The man hit the floor hard. Rolled. Didn't rise. The judge hesitated, then raised Marcus's hand. The crowd didn't cheer. It watched, like they weren't sure what just happened. By now the crowd wasn't laughing. It wasn't cheering either. It was curious. Reporters at the back whispered into mics. Marcus Bell advances again. Some were confused, some suspicious, some moved. He shouldn't still be standing, one fighter muttered. He's not fighting to win, another whispered. He's fighting to be seen. But Marcus didn't hear them. He sat at the far end of the arena, drinking slowly, eyes closed, sweat dripping to the floor like prayers unspoken. Just before the final bracket was announced, a surprise twist flashed across the screen. The announcer cleared his throat. And now, for the Open Division final, we have... The screen shifted. Bell Marcus versus Riker. Travis, Iron Lotus Dojo. Talia's jaw dropped. Marcus opened his eyes, and for the first time that day, he smiled.
It wasn't a joyful smile. It wasn't relief.
It was a slow, quiet reckoning, the kind that builds in bones, not mouths. The announcer continued, almost trembling. This final match will be live-streamed globally, courtesy of FightStream and Channel 6. Suddenly, 1,000 eyes weren't enough. The world was now watching. Marcus stood slowly. Every joint crackled like a book being reopened. He adjusted his stance and whispered only to himself, I remember everything. I care anymore. They were watching Marcus, rooting for him. Not out of pity but pride. Even some of Riker's former students sat straighter. In the back row, Jalen whispered to his mom, he's teaching him. With every passing second, the man who once barked orders at children began to unravel. His punches grew frantic. His footwork sloppier. He screamed mid-swing, a sound not of rage, but panic. He wasn't fighting a homeless man. He was fighting everything he never understood, everything he tried to erase. And Marcus, still calm, still measured, countered with elegance, never once letting fury take the wheel. Because this wasn't revenge. It was clarity. 10 seconds left. Riker lunged with a desperate haymaker. Marcus ducked, stepped aside, pivoted on his heel, and threw a lightning-fast combination. Palm block, open hand strike to the chest, then a low leg sweep that didn't drop Riker. Just made him stumble. Enough to prove control, not enough to harm. The bell rang. They stood in the center breathing heavy. Marcus bowed again. Riker didn't. The referee didn't raise a hand. Not yet. The judges huddled, whispering frantically. Crowd silent. Phones raised. World watching. Marcus turned to Talia. She nodded, barely holding back tears. He didn't smile. He just waited, like he always had. The gymnasium had never felt heavier. Every breath echoed. Every shift in the bleachers sounded like thunder. On one side of the room sat families in matching polos, tournament banners clutched in pride, holding phones aloft like trophies to be. On the other were kids from South LA, teens from public rec centers, single moms and elder veterans, people who saw more than just the match. They saw a reckoning. The racial and economic tension wasn't spoken, but it was seen. It clung to every whisper, every glance. White parents in pressed khakis on one side, black teens in hoodies on the other. And in the center of it all stood two men, once strangers, now symbols. Marcus Bell, Travis Riker. The fighter they'd tried to bury, and the man who once held the shovel. The referee stood between them, eyes darting with tension. When the bell rings, you engage. Not before. Marcus bowed. Slow, deliberate, respectful. Riker didn't. Instead, he smirked. Arms crossed. The bell hadn't rung yet.
Then, crack.
A sudden cheap elbow jabbed into Marcus's chest. He stumbled back, coughing once, caught off guard. Gasps surged from the crowd. Talia leapt to her feet. That's illegal. The referee didn't move. Riker shrugged. Didn't hear the bell. Marcus, hunched slightly, exhaled, looked up, didn't flinch, didn't step back, just stood, and Marcus didn't charge. He circled slow, fluid, composed. His body moved like it remembered every insult, but his form remembered every lesson. Riker lunged, aggressive, clumsy in his anger, but Marcus parried with grace. He didn't strike first. He didn't shout. He absorbed. He breathed. He waited. The crowd grew louder with every block Marcus landed, every pivot away from violence. Then Riker, teeth clenched, spat. You'll always be a statistic. Marcus's eyes didn't flicker. He didn't snap. He just whispered, you're right. Pause. But I'm about to set one. Riker growled, pivoted hard and dropped into a wrestler's crouch. He charged low, aiming to lift Marcus off the ground, to slam him, humiliate him, break the image. But Marcus saw it coming. Instead of resisting, he twisted midair, using Riker's momentum against him. In one surreal moment, Marcus rolled over Riker's back, landed light on his feet, and flipped into a stance no one recognized. A hybrid between Shotokan and an old Ito technique never seen outside Daniel's inner circle. The crowd gasped. The camera zoomed. Even the announcer stuttered. I've never seen that before. Riker stumbled, confused, face flushed with embarrassment. He swung blindly. A wide hook. Marcus ducked, stepped inside, tapped Riker's shoulder gently. A move not meant to hurt, but to show control. Then stepped back. It was subtle, but undeniable. The crowd's energy shifted. They weren't cheering. The gym felt like it was holding its breath. Even the lights seemed to hesitate, flickering subtly, as the judges whispered behind their table, hunched over scorecards as though they were deciphering ancient text. The announcer mic pressed tight to his lips, paced in small, anxious circles. Everyone, from the bleachers to the sidelines, waited for one thing: a raised hand. Marcus stood motionless, in the center of the mat. Sweat ran slowly down his temple, but his eyes remained still, not at Riker, not at the judges, just down at the floor, where his bare foot had drawn a faint half-moon from his pivot. A crescent of proof, of precision. Riker stood across from him, flushed and breathing hard, avoiding eye contact. The head judge finally rose, clearing his throat into the microphone. After review of the scoring, and timing metrics from the digital sensors, the board recognizes that Marcus Bell achieved a new knockout speed record in the open division. The room exploded. Cheering gasps. Applause rippled like a shockwave. Even those who hadn't clapped before stood up now. The stat was undeniable. The time clock had caught it all. Marcus had performed the fastest recorded, legal three-strike combination in the tournament's history. Clean, measured, without a single foul. Talia's camera caught every expression: stunned silence from Riker's students, open-mouthed disbelief from some judges, pride burning in Jalen's wide eyes. But the microphone wasn't done. However, the judge continued. Due to an infraction logged at the start of the match, an unverified contact moment prior to the bell, the victory, per rulebook clause 4.73, is awarded to Travis Riker. The applause died. Instantly, a sharp boo rang out. Then another. Then more.
What?
You gotta be kidding. Even the live commentators stumbled. That's unprecedented. The infraction they're referencing. That was Riker's pre-bell elbow. One of the junior officials leaned into the judge's ear. There was tension, a shake of the head, and a hand raised in dismissal. The trophy, a polished, gold-gilded statue, was handed to Riker. He didn't smile. Not this time. He took it with limp fingers, eyes still on the ground. Marcus didn't argue, didn't shout. He simply turned, bowed once more, and walked off the mat. Talia followed with her camera rolling. Crowd members poured out of the stands, some yelling, others pulling out their phones. This ain't justice. That man won. Even two judges visibly refused to stand during the final announcement. One of them, a retired sensei from East Oakland, left the judges' table entirely. It was beyond unfair. It was transparent. Later that night, Renee Harlow, a black investigative journalist with a platform built on exposing systemic injustice in sports, posted a thread that detonated across the internet. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Open martial arts tournament's long record of quietly disqualifying or denying advancement to fighters of color. Spoiler: Marcus Bell isn't the first. In a 12-tweet expose, she detailed years of buried decisions, obscure rulebook technicalities, and off-record warnings given to promising Black and Latino fighters. Screenshots, email leaks, interview clips. It was all there. One post read, "He broke a record. They broke tradition to make sure he wouldn't be remembered for it." By morning, the hashtag Justice for Marcus trended in 9 countries. 3 major sponsors, including a high-profile martial arts gear brand, publicly pulled funding from the tournament within 20. Their statement was brutal. "We do not support organizations that punish discipline, talent, or character. Our partnership is over." The board tried damage control, press releases, edited replays, redirecting reporters, but the damage was done. For once, silence wasn't working. Talia uploaded the full, unedited livestream that night. No commentary, no music, no cuts. Just Marcus, from bow to bell. Every block, every pivot, every ounce of dignity. In the moment he should have won. The clip was shared by activists, athletes, even politicians. A senator retweeted it, captioning it simply, "How many times must we rewrite truth because the system prefers the lie?" Her video hit 5 million views in under 12 hours. Back at the abandoned dojo, Marcus swept quietly, not because the floor needed it, but because it grounded him. Jalen sat on the bench, watching him. "Are you mad?" the boy asked. "No," Marcus said softly. "I'm practiced." Jalen tilted his head. "Practiced?" "At being disqualified," Marcus answered. "That's how they stay in control. If they can't beat you with rules, they'll bend them until they do." But everyone saw what really happened. Marcus looked up, faint smile on his lips. "Then maybe they'll remember that more than the trophy." The next morning, as sunlight poured through the dojo's shattered window panes, Marcus's flip phone buzzed once on the dusty windowsill. An email. Subject: formal invitation, Congressional Panel on Sports Equity and Rehabilitation. The message read, "Mr. Bell, you are invited to testify before the U.S. Congress regarding racial bias, athletic rehabilitation, and public integrity in national sports infrastructure. Your story matters. Sincerely, Office of the Committee on Equity in Athletics." Marcus stared at the screen, blinking, and for the first time in days, he sat down, not out of defeat, but out of the weight of history, finally shifting toward his name. The Capitol building stood like a monument to marble ideals, grand, symmetrical, and indifferent. Its pillars reached for the sky as if truth lived somewhere higher than people could reach. But inside, a man in a borrowed navy blue suit sat quietly in a hearing room, adjusting a collar that pinched at the throat like expectation. Marcus Bell had never worn a suit like this. Talia sat behind him, her camera bag at her feet, a nod of calm steadiness on her face. Jalen and his mother sat further back in the gallery, along with dozens of strangers who now knew his story better than some knew their own families. The committee chair, Rep. Diane Welker, a white woman with sharp glasses and a reputation for centrist pragmatism, called the hearing to order. "Mr. Bell," she said, "you may begin." Marcus stood slowly, cleared his throat once. The mic was too high. He adjusted it, and then he began. "I didn't come here because I wanted attention," he said, voice steady but quiet. "I came because somebody somewhere decided I mattered enough to be heard. That ain't something I'm used to." The room was still. I was trained to believe in discipline, honor, control. But when I got arrested at 18 for something I didn't do, none of that mattered. The judge didn't ask me about my trophies. No one asked about my sensei. They saw my name, my face, my clothes, and decided who I was. A few lawmakers looked down. I served time, not because I was guilty, but because I was convenient. He paused. But even after that, when I got out, I still believed. I believed I could find a place, a job, maybe even a second chance. But nobody wanted me. I was either too black, too poor, too convicted, or too broken. Some days, I wasn't sure I was still human. Someone in the back sniffled quietly, and then I saw a kid, a black boy, like me, staring at me like I was something more than my past. He didn't care about where I slept, or what I wore. He saw a stance, a breath, a possibility, and I remembered who I used to be. By the time Marcus spoke about the tournament, how he broke records, how the trophy was handed to the man who mocked him, several lawmakers had set down their pens. One woman, Rep. Garcia from New Mexico, wiped her eyes openly. "What I'm saying," Marcus concluded, "is that the system don't need to be perfect, but it does need to stop pretending that justice is neutral. If I had never been filmed, I'd still be sleeping under a bridge, and y'all would never have known my name." A hush fell, and then slowly, applause hesitant at first, then louder. The chairman banged his gavel once. "Please, no outbursts." But Marcus didn't need the clapping. He already knew his words had landed. 2 weeks later, a bipartisan group introduced a proposal on the House floor, the Marcus Bell Sports Rehabilitation Act. The bill aimed to create national funding for sports training programs inside correctional facilities, to provide job placement for reformed athletes, and to ban discrimination against formerly incarcerated individuals in national sports tournaments. Cable news spun the headline into something larger. Should felons compete? Can you erase a past with a punch? From prison to podium. The ethics of redemption. The debate was fierce. But for once, the center of it wasn't a politician or a scandal. It was Marcus Bell. Across the country, something strange began to happen. Students organized small karate fundraisers, titled the Homeless Hero Invitational. In Detroit, A principal suspended dress code rules so kids could wear gi uniforms to class. In Brooklyn, a mural of Marcus appeared on a school wall with the words, "Truth, Balance, Bell." Marcus received letters, hundreds from fathers in halfway houses, from kids in foster care, from retired boxers who said they'd lost hope until they saw his interview. A handwritten note arrived from a 16-year-old in Missouri. "They told me I couldn't play basketball 'cause of my probation. But I saw you on TV. Now I know. Maybe that ain't the end." In the middle of editing new footage of the restored dojo, Talia's phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered cautiously. "Ms. Reese?" said the voice on the other end. Smooth, polished, clearly rehearsed. "My name is Kai Ellington. I'm calling on behalf of Cinematic Global. We followed Marcus's journey closely. We believe his story deserves the right platform, the right lens, and the right legacy." Talia's hand froze over her keyboard. "We're offering full production on a feature documentary, theatrical release, global festival run, cross-market streaming. Marcus will retain creative input and appear in all marketing." She glanced at Marcus, who was cleaning the floor behind her with Jalen. "And the catch?" she asked. The voice paused. "Just a second too long. We'd need him to sign over exclusive rights, meaning no additional interviews, no unauthorized social streams, and one narrative clarification." Talia's eyebrows lifted. "Clarification?" "Specifically," the voice continued, "we'd ask Marcus to omit any mention of tournament bias or racial injustice. Focus on resilience, unity, uplift. Leave out the controversy." Talia leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. "You want the heart of the story, but not the wound." "It's not about censorship," the caller said quickly. "It's about reaching the widest possible audience. Inspiration. Sell." She didn't reply, just ended the call. That night, Talia sat with Marcus beneath the new dojo lights, the gym still smelling of fresh paint and old echoes. She told him about the offer. He didn't react. Then slowly he said, "They want to sell a version of me that won't make them uncomfortable." Talia nodded. Marcus turned toward the wall, where the mural of Sensei Daniel still stood, arms crossed, eyes calm. "What if I said yes?" he whispered, "but told the truth anyway?" Before she could answer, his phone buzzed. A new number. No caller ID. He picked up. A man's voice said, "Mr. Bell, we'd like to talk to you about a different kind of story. One only you can finish." The soundstage lobby smelled like new leather and controlled narratives. A digital banner overhead flickered. Binge-craft originals, real stories, real impact. A sleek assistant led Marcus and Talia past glass walls and color-coded offices. Everywhere he looked, faces behind MacBooks barely lifted their eyes. To them, he was just a story acquisition, a trending moment to be shaped, streamed, and sold. They reached a private conference room lined with matte black sound panels and a curved glass wall. A silver carafe of sparkling water sat untouched in the center of the table. A man in a suit too tight across the shoulders stood waiting. Darren Leary, development director, former agent, and self-declared media whisperer. "Marcus Bell," he said with polished enthusiasm, reaching out a hand. The man who turned a dojo floor into a national conversation. Marcus didn't take the handshake, just sat down quietly. Talia sat beside him, notebook in hand, camera bag at her feet. "We're offering a full exclusive," Darren began. "Rights to your life story, docuseries, companion podcast, option for dramatization. Streaming platforms are fighting for this level of redemption." He tapped his tablet and slid it across the table. "And a number?" Talia asked. He smiled. "Mid-six figures out the gate." Marcus leaned forward, scanned the document. Then he looked up. "You want the rights to my life. But what exactly do you want from me?" Darren hesitated. "Well, to be authentic, we need full access. Interviews, archive, your voice, your footage." "And Riker?" Marcus asked. Darren shrugged, as if that part were obvious. "We'd need the real story. He's a character now. Controversy drives eyes." "You mean dirt?" Marcus said flatly. Darren gave a tight smile. "Truth is subjective, Mr. Bell. Narratives need weight. We don't need you to lie. But dramatizing the tension, giving the audience a clear villain that helps sell it." Talia's jaw clenched. Marcus leaned back. "He made his own mistakes. I don't need to make them worse." "Marcus," Darren said softly, leaning in, "you've been given an opportunity to rewrite your story. Don't let nostalgia get in the way of impact." Marcus stood. So did Talia. As they walked out, Darren called behind them. "We can revisit this. Numbers can be flexible." The next day the offer returned, but smaller, leaner. Now only a fraction of the original bid. An email from a lower-tier rep read, "Without narrative permission regarding Coach Riker, we're unable to fully commit to the story arc our platform expects." Translation: no villain, no deal. That night, Marcus sat with Talia, under the broken marquee of the old dojo, sipping soup from a thermos, silent. "They want blood," Talia said. "Even if you already gave it." Marcus shook his head. "Truth is enough." "You sure about that?" He looked at her. "Truth is all I ever had." Talia had seen enough. She posted screenshots of the negotiation. Redacted names, but clear intention. She captioned it. They offered him 6 figures to rewrite his story, only if he agreed to villainize someone else. This isn't storytelling. This is exploitation. The post detonated. Influencers, journalists, athletes reposted it. Comments flooded the studio's socials. Let Marcus speak for himself. Respect his dignity, or leave the story alone. You can't own someone's pain. Truth is enough trended for 48 hours straight. The studio issued a generic "We support Marcus" post. But it was too late. They had fumbled the hero the world had already chosen. Donations began to flood Marcus's GoFundMe, a modest page Talia had created quietly weeks before, just in case. Within 72 hours, it passed 1. Messages accompanied the funds. "For the dojo that raised you. For every kid who needs their own Sensei Daniel. For the record they couldn't erase." With Talia's help, Marcus used the funds to legally purchase the abandoned dojo, where Sensei Daniel once taught. Paperwork processed, permits cleared. He renamed it the Bell Foundation, not after himself, but the idea. A place where every kid too poor, too dark, too broken, could find balance again. The renovation became a community project. Painters, electricians, old students, even rival martial artists, offered help. Jalen painted the new mural, a silhouette of Marcus mid-kata beneath the words, "Honor, Truth, Right." Marcus didn't teach just forms. He taught how to breathe through anger, how to stand when dismissed, how to carry dignity like armor. Talia documented it all. Not for profit, not for a platform, just for proof. Proof that truth, unpolished, still had power. One chilly morning, a city worker renovating a condemned postal annex handed Marcus a dusty box. "This got stuck in backlog. Postmark 2004. Found it during demolition." The envelope was yellowed. Sealed. Marcus read the sender's name and stopped breathing.
Daniel Ito.
Hands shaking, he opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, nearly 2 decades old, with words that would change everything. The envelope was yellowed, frayed at the corners, the ink smudged just enough to betray its age. Marcus held it like it was glass. His thumb brushed over the return address again, as if reading it twice would somehow change what it said. From Sensei Daniel Ito. Postmarked. March. The same month Marcus had been arrested. The same week everything had started to collapse. He hadn't spoken since the city worker handed it to him outside the renovation site. Talia watched from a few feet away, lips parted but silent, knowing that whatever was inside, it wasn't hers to interrupt. Marcus sat down slowly on the bench outside the dojo, the mural of his younger self and Daniel towering just above him. The air was still. Even the neighborhood dogs seemed to fall quiet. He opened it. The letter was handwritten, Daniel's penmanship unmistakable, clean, slanted, precise. Every curve seemed to carry the weight of years, of pride, of intention. "Marcus, I hope this finds you in strength. If you're reading this, it means the wheels of life have turned in ways we couldn't control. You were never just a student. You were the future, the proof, the legacy we were always trying to build, in a world that didn't want to see it. I've nominated you for the JKA Shadow Path, the International Development Program for fighters who don't come from privilege or Federation pipelines. I believe in your ability, not just as a competitor, but as a leader, one who lifts others by how he stands." Marcus's eyes blurred. The ink doubled, tripled. "They'll contact you if you're still training. But even if you're not, remember this. You were always meant to lead. Not follow, not survive, but guide. You've already won more than any trophy can measure." Daniel, the page slipped from Marcus's fingers. He bent forward, elbows on knees, and cried. Not with rage, not with guilt, but with the raw release of something buried too long. Belief. Talia reached out but didn't touch him. Instead, she sat beside him on the cold bench, the letter between them. He believed in you before they tried to erase you, she said. Marcus wiped his face, breathing hard. And I believed him, he whispered. The letter wasn't just a note. It was proof, time-stamped, postmarked, that even before the arrest, before the world tried to shove him off its map, Marcus had already been seen, already been chosen. When Talia showed it to her contacts, lawyers and media consultants alike agreed. The letter had weight. Not legally, perhaps, but publicly, morally. It painted a portrait of potential crushed by timing and a broken system. She scanned it, archived it, and then, with Marcus's blessing, framed the original. It now hung behind the front desk of the Bell Foundation, just above the dojo's registration wall. Jalen read it aloud one day during class. His voice cracked near the end. The buzz from the congressional hearing, the documentary offer, and now the letter drew attention Marcus never expected, and from places he never thought would listen. The City Council of Los Angeles reached out with a proposal, formal funding to transform the dojo into a full-scale community center. They called it Project Balance. It would include a martial arts training hall, after-school tutoring spaces, mental health counseling services, a job placement and resume building office, a subsidized meal program. Marcus sat in the council chambers during the vote, still in that same borrowed suit. The measure passed unanimously. He walked out into the LA sunlight, not with applause, but with clarity. For the first time in his life, the city that once pushed him out was now making room for him to stay. Just days later, Talia received an international call from a Tokyo number. The voice on the other end spoke English with a soft accent. Is this the guardian of the Bell Foundation? I suppose, she said, glancing at Marcus, who was teaching a group of kids how to fall without fear. The man continued. We've recently become aware of Mr. Bell's history with Sensei Ito, and more importantly, his championship title in 2003. After reviewing archival footage, referee reports, and competitive logs, we have determined that Mr. Bell's disqualification in the state nationals was not only unethical, but in violation of the Global Federation's Code of Equity. Talia's heart stopped. The voice wasn't done. The International Karate Federation is formally reinstating Marcus Bell's 2003 Junior State Championship title, retroactively. Talia couldn't breathe. She ran to the mat where Marcus was training. He was teaching Jalen how to shift his weight during a block. Marcus, she called, waving the phone. It's Tokyo. He raised an eyebrow. Took the call. Listened for a long time. Then simply whispered, I never thought I'd be remembered for something they tried to take. As he hung up, Talia's phone buzzed again, this time from a U.S. number. She answered. The voice was nervous. Corporate. Miss Reese? This is Christine Harlan with the National Athletic Ethics Committee. We're calling because, well, there's been a petition over 2 million signatures requesting Marcus Bell be nominated for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Talia stood frozen. Marcus looked over, wiping sweat from his brow.
What now? He asked.
She smiled slowly, voice cracking. They want to give you the highest honor in the country. By the time fall settled over East LA, the Bell Foundation's front doors no longer creaked. The paint no longer peeled. The lights inside stayed on well past dusk, illuminating rows of small, focused faces, spinning, kicking, bowing, beneath a mural that now stretched across the entire gym wall, a silhouette of Marcus Bell, open arms, beneath the words, We rise together. Marcus taught 6 days a week. No salary, no agenda, just consistency. He opened the doors at 6 a.m., even before the kids arrived, sweeping the floors, unrolling the mats. The dojo wasn't just a school anymore. It was a sanctuary, a shelter for the left behind, the passed over, the too dark, the too loud, the too poor. And most days, Jalen was the first one in. Jalen had changed. Not in noise or size, but in how he carried himself, the way his shoulders settled in his frame, the way his eyes didn't dart anymore when he entered a room. He bowed every time he crossed the mat. He spoke with intention. He listened like he meant it. Marcus trained him harder than the others. Not with cruelty but with urgency. You move like someone who'll have to explain himself less if you strike clean. Jalen nodded. Always nodded. Months after the tournament, Jalen competed in his own. He won. A regional youth bracket. Small crowd. Modest trophy. But when they handed him the mic and asked who inspired him, he didn't hesitate. To Coach Bell, he said. The first man who ever looked like me and didn't tell me to shrink. The video went viral. Again, it started as a whisper, a PTA meeting, a quiet suggestion from a principal in South Central, then a proposal, then a pilot program. Within 3 months, 5 LA schools implemented the Bell Method, an anti-racism martial arts curriculum that mixed kata with classroom discussion. Lessons about control, conflict resolution, and cultural identity were built into the form itself. The motto, not just how to fight, but what to fight for. Kids who once skipped class now ran to the gym early. Discipline replaced defiance. Teachers reported fewer suspensions. Parents reported less fear. Marcus taught the first workshop himself. Not in uniform, just in honesty. "These kids don't need pity," he said into the mic. The auditorium packed. "They need mirrors. They need to see strength that looks like them." One Tuesday, just after dusk, as the last group of kids filed out of the dojo, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Travis Riker. No longer the coach in command, no longer the loudest man in the room. He wore no badge of honor, just jeans, a button-up shirt, and the weight of hindsight draped across his shoulders. Marcus looked up from where he was rolling mats. They locked eyes. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the air, not time. Then Riker stepped in. "I heard about the letter," he said. "Daniel always did believe in you." Marcus didn't reply, just nodded once. "I was wrong," Riker continued. "About a lot of things. About you." Another pause. "I thought strength was about dominance," he said quietly. "But I see now, it was always about discipline, integrity, and truth." Marcus let that sit, then said, "Sometimes redemption means watching, not leading." Riker bowed slightly. Marcus didn't hug him, didn't invite him to teach, but he extended his hand, and Riker took it. A handshake. Nothing more, but everything it needed to be. The Bell Foundation's newsletter gained over 100,000 subscribers. Its scholarship fund doubled in 6 months. Politicians visited. Celebrities volunteered. Marcus, still reluctant in front of cameras, was now listed in the Time 100 under Icons of the Year. Still, he woke up every morning the same way. Before dawn, sweeping the floor, checking the windows, whispering a quiet thanks to Daniel's mural before the day began. He never asked for attention, but it kept coming anyway. One Thursday afternoon, a white envelope arrived in the dojo's mail slot. No return address, only an embossed seal. The White House. Talia opened it first, then handed it to Marcus wordlessly. He read it once, then again. The letter was short, formal. "Dear Mr. Marcus Bell, on behalf of the President of the United States, you are hereby invited to attend a national ceremony at the White House, where you will be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your contributions to youth empowerment, justice reform, and civic healing through martial arts and mentorship." Marcus lowered the paper. Jalen, watching nearby, whispered, "Coach?" Marcus blinked slowly. "I think they just asked me to stand in a room I wasn't supposed to enter." The door to the East Wing opened with a quiet pneumatic hiss, not unlike the sound of a dojo mat unfurling before class. Marcus Bell stepped through in a tailored black suit. No logos, no labels, just clean lines, polished shoes, and a calm that had been earned, not stitched. The White House gleamed under the midday sun, white stone gleaming like it was carved from the sky itself. Its steps had hosted kings and astronauts, war heroes and world leaders. Now a man who once slept under a freeway bridge walked into its heart, invited not as an accessory to someone else's vision, but as the vision itself. Secret Service agents nodded in subtle respect. A protocol officer whispered reminders about cameras and cues. Marcus barely heard them. His fingers grazed the inner lining of his jacket pocket, where the original letter from Sensei Daniel was folded carefully between 2 photos, one of his mother, and the other of Jalen holding his first tournament trophy. The East Room was filled with gold curtains, gold light fixtures, a gold seal behind the presidential podium. But the thing that caught Marcus's eye wasn't the decor, it was the faces. A boy in the front row wearing a Bell Foundation hoodie. A woman in a wheelchair with a martial arts patch stitched into her sleeve. A judge from his old tournament seated quietly near the back, head slightly bowed. And in the center, the president, a composed silver-haired man, who stood with a solemn smile as he extended his hand.
"Mr. Marcus Bell," he said, "you didn't just change a system. You reminded us that character, not circumstance, defines a citizen."
They shook hands. A photo was taken, but the flash didn't matter. The moment was already eternal. The president spoke first, his voice echoing across a sea of cameras and screens. He recounted Marcus's journey, from forgotten talent to viral sensation, from wrongfully imprisoned to a global advocate for reform. But let me be clear, the president said, his tone shifting. This award isn't for a single kick or a record broken. It's for the quiet choices, the ones made off camera, beneath bridges, behind locked doors. When no one was watching, he paused.
Mr. Bell reminded us that grace is not weakness, that strength without justice is just power, and that the smallest dojo can birth the biggest legacy.
Applause filled the room.
Not polite.
Real.
Resonant. When Marcus stepped up to the podium, he didn't look nervous. He looked home. He adjusted the mic, breathed once, then began. I used to think freedom was a place, a city, a job, a title. But I've learned that real freedom, he paused, eyes scanning the crowd, is the ability to stand in your truth, even when the world tells you it ain't enough. He talked about Sensei Daniel, about cell walls, about Jalen. He talked about being called a danger, a joke, a mistake. But I'm none of those, he said quietly. I'm a teacher now, because someone once taught me that you don't need permission to lead. You just need purpose. The speech aired live, not just on news channels, but in classrooms, in rec centers, in prison day rooms, where men stood still to watch, in churches where pastors adjusted sermons, and in a living room in Montgomery, Alabama, where a young black boy sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, chin resting on his fists. He turned to his mother and whispered, I want to be just like him. She smiled, eyes wet, and said, You already are. The final scenes unfolded not in grand stages, but across forgotten spaces. A field in Oakland, kids in mismatched Bell Foundation shirts, mimicking kata in a circle. A shelter in Cleveland, where a social worker played Marcus's speech on repeat during group therapy. A prison in Mississippi, where an inmate, quiet and still, practiced slow strikes against his bunk, whispering, not just how to fight, what to fight for. Back in LA, the Bell Foundation expanded. 2 more buildings, a mobile dojo, new instructors, many of them former inmates, now licensed teachers, who led with calm voices and open hands. Marcus taught less now, not because he was tired, but because he had trained others to continue. No fighter had yet beaten Marcus's knockout speed at the tournament. But he didn't frame that stat on the wall. Instead, he framed a quote beneath the scoreboard in the dojo lobby. Impact isn't measured in seconds. It's measured in what comes after.
That was his legacy.
Not the strikes, but the silence they shattered. The White House ceremony ended with a standing ovation. Marcus exited quietly through a side hall, sunlight catching the edge of his metal. He didn't need more cameras. He needed air. Outside, a journalist rushed toward him. Mic extended. Mr. Bell, any final thoughts? Anything you want the world to know? Marcus stopped, turned, and with a soft, steady voice, said the line that would headline papers, close documentaries, and echo in gym walls for decades to come. I was just walking home and found the world waiting. If you've ever felt the weight of being judged before being heard, if this story made your chest tighten with anger or ache with truth, don't let it end here. Type yes if you believe silence shouldn't protect